Hello, I'm Vegas Vic, and this is my new series which I like to call Memories. I guess the best way to describe it is that I want to share with you some thoughts, some remembrances of my time in Hollywood and Las Vegas, and people I've met and things that I have been part of, or other thoughts and things from my life that I thought you might find interesting. I've talked about this to my friends, and they always said, well, this is quite interesting. You should share it with somebody. Now, I hope I can remember most of it here because I'm usually better when I'm in a group and I can ask questions, or they ask me questions and I can respond to it. So if you have any questions that you would like me to answer, just post them here on the video or any of the other videos in this series, and if I can answer it, I will answer it certainly. This particular episode is about the TV show MASH. Now, for those of you who don't know anything about this show or the 1968 film on which it was based, just Google it. It's M-A-S-H, MASH. It's still being shown in reruns on various cable channels. It's a wonderful television show, and I love it very much. The star of the show, Alan Alda, is somebody that I have always wanted to meet. Never had a chance to do so. I've met a great many other people, but unfortunately not him. The way that I would like to describe this is, it's a very fond memory that I have that kind of began like this. It's my first time in Hollywood was in 1973, which was 1 year after the show began, the TV show MASH, which began to air on television in 1972. Now, that time I only had 48 hours. Now, I will describe what I mean by that in another episode of this series, Memories, and that particular episode involves Carol Burnett, Elvis Presley, a Cadillac, and myself. So I'm going to call that episode Carol, Elvis, Cadillac, and me. And this will be another part of this particular series. But the story that I want to tell you today has to do with the show MASH. But 10 years later, I arrived back in Hollywood again 10 years later, 1983. And that was just about the time when the final episode of the series, after its 13-year run, no, wait a minute, 11-year run, had finished production. Now, at the time when I arrived in 1983, I spent a lot more time in Hollywood and later in Las Vegas. And it was kind of a really strange set of circumstances that brought me around there. I kind of was one of those people that literally got off the bus in Hollywood, and I looked around holding my suitcase and I said, "This is it. I am God's gift to Hollywood." What an optimistic idiot I was. Anyway, so as things would kind of happen for me, I wound up being invited to a lot of places. You see, my mom at the time had known several famous directors in the movie business and had managed to make some introductions for me, some award winners, including Oscar winners. And so I kind of wound up in being able to be introduced to that particular circle of people. And I'll tell those stories some other time because they're very interesting as well. I wound up becoming what's called a Hollywood party animal. But anyway, that's a story for another time again. But this particular story had to do with the TV show MASH, which I loved very much. My all-time favorite TV shows are Hogans Heroes, which finished production in 1971, and then MASH, which started production in 1972. And the show MASH just holds a great warm spot in my heart. At the time, I never got a chance to be on that show. I got a chance to be in other films, but I never got a chance to actually be in that program. And at that time, I would have kind of given half my life for just 1 minute of screen time of that show because it just meant so much to me. Anyway, so the story that I want to tell you, it goes like this. At the time in 1983, when I got back to Hollywood, I was able to have access to a lot of the Hollywood studios, and as a result of that, I also had an opportunity to visit Fox Studios, which are on Pico Boulevard. And this particular day meant quite a bit to me, because what happened is I drove into Fox Studios off of Pico, and I made a right turn, and then you make another right turn, and the gate was there. You talk to the security guard. I had my credentials and everything, so they opened the gate, and then you drive through the gate for 100 yards or so, and then you make a sharp left turn, and you turn into what was called Main Street. Now, that was the street where on the left side, as I'm driving in towards the inner parts of the studio, was the New York facade. Now, Main Street is the street where they filmed, major parades. Like, for example, in the film The Music Man, they filmed the main parade scene on that particular street with the New York facade on the left side as I was driving into the studio. And as I was driving in there, and I looked, and on the left side, parked by the side of the street where they have the New York facade, was the ambulance and the bus from the TV show MASH. Now, I was a huge fan of the show, and I still am today. I'm still watching them on reruns. And so as I was driving in, I pulled in and parked just in front of the ambulance and the bus. Now, they were parked nose in, so the tail ends of the bus and the tail end of the ambulance were the parts where I parked my car right beside them. And I got out of the car, and I kind of stood there. We're parked close together, so I put one hand on the back of the ambulance and the other hand on the back of the bus. And I realized that I had arrived too late, because at that time they had just finished filming the final episode of MASH, which was called Goodbye, Farewell, and Amen, which was at that time the highest rated and most watched television episode of all time. When it finally went to air, I think it was 1984 that it finally went to air. And so as I was standing there and I was looking at this, and I said to myself, if only you had a chance 10 years before in 1973, maybe, just maybe, you could have been part of that program. And it made a big impact on me, because I kind of felt like I was a little bit out of step with time. And sometimes I still feel that way today, because it seems that in many instances in my life, I just kind of was always either a little bit too late or a little bit too early, but mostly kind of out of step with time, out of sync, like this particular episode. When I arrived there at the Fox Studios and I saw that ambulance and that bus, and I realized that at that time they were still editing the program and probably filming pickups, which is a film term meaning that they are doing reshoots of things, that maybe they had to redo, or doing audio dubbing and recording and, basically mastering the program. And so I was kind of thinking there and remembering, and it just meant a lot to me that I kind of missed the boat there a little bit, and I felt sad, and I still feel sad about that today, because I would have very much liked to be part of that show and that program. So anyway, so I then finally drove on, and a little bit further on made another left turn, and I wound up going to the commissary over there where I used to eat lunch. I used to eat lunch either at Fox Studios or at Paramount Pictures. There, they were filming at Paramount. They were filming Star Trek: The Next Generation at that time, which was also another interesting episode. I wound up working on some scripts for there, but that's another story again. Anyway, so the reason I'm mentioning this is because one of the people that I wound up meeting many years later was Gary Berghoff, who played Radar O'Reilly on that show. And it was just a really nice time. I have a picture of him somewhere. If I find it before I post this to my channel on YouTube, I'm going to go and post it up. Don't know where I put it, unfortunately. It was quite a number of years ago. And that's another part of what I sometimes regret, is because I've, over the years, met a lot of people, and some of them I took pictures with and others I didn't. And sometimes it just didn't occur to me that these were important times in my life. Anyway, so the point of all of this is to kind of introduce the program that I call Memories. And you know, since that time in MASH, and great many of the actors have passed away that have made the show now. I believe Alan Alda is still with us. So Alan, if you're watching, or if anybody who's watching knows him, would very much like to talk with you. So you can get in touch with me. Send me an email at vegasradionetwork@gmail.com. So hopefully we'll do that. Anyway, so that's my remembrance for today. I guess it probably doesn't mean very much to other people, but it meant a lot to me, because I kind of felt that I could have been a part of a great TV program had I been able to stay that first time in 1973, but I wasn't. And so that's why I really wanted to post this. It's kind of an introduction to my series of memories and remembrances. Okay, so the next episode, I'm going to talk about Carol, Elvis, a Cadillac, and me, and Las Vegas. So I hope you enjoyed this. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, please. It's very easy. Just click the button. It says subscribe, and you'll be notified anytime I post anything. And hopefully you'll be interested in the things that I have to say. Okay, so for now, this is Vegas Vic in Las Vegas, Nevada. As always, saying see you in the casino. So long.